the largest hacks, if not robberies, of almost all time. North Lazarus Group, their state-sanctioned hacking group who has stolen billions of dollars in the past, they were able to infect AWS and get some package in there, but they were able to stop this or get the ETH sent to them rather than to the location it was supposed to go, right? So over the last month, the group has been laundering the money, right? They've been using this decentralized protocol called Thorchain. They put the ETH in and were able to get Bitcoin out. They changed all their ETH into Bitcoin. $1.5 billion worth of Ethereum turned into $1.1 billion worth of Bitcoin. They had $1.5 billion worth of Ethereum stolen. I do not recommend it, as most Bitcoin maximalists will not.
All right, we are live again with the Daily Bitcoin Podcast. This is Craig LeBlanc, the doorman, and I have a special guest with me, Rob Wallace, the co-founder of Bitcoin News. He had actually one of my earlier guests to the other podcast that I'd helped create. And when I started this one, I reached out to a lot of the guys because I really like the work he's doing and kind of wanted to help raise awareness to all the stuff he's been doing. And I see you're getting a ton of traction. Your following on X is just doubled since last we talked. Tell us about the team. How's the Bitcoin News channel going?
Yeah, man. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate being here. And yeah, last time we talked, was it a year ago? Was the last time
Man,
I did
I
this?
tell you what, I have totally lost track of time. When you put your head down working, a year passes by unbeknownst to you.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I think it has been about a year since last we spoke.
Yeah, man. Well, it's been grinding, right? We've been doing Bitcoin News for about 2 years now. I started in January of 2023 and took over in September of 23 and have been running it with my business partner Matt for about a year and a half plus now. So yeah, we've got, of course, the Twitter that we've been growing on a daily basis. Of course, we've got Luke Mikic over on YouTube. We've got daily editorial on bitcoinnews.com. We've got multiple newsletters. And yeah, we're just trying to provide as much informative, educational, intelligent Bitcoin content that the community wants and needs on a daily basis.
Yeah. So how do y'all maybe go into that? Well, actually, I do kind of want to go into the backstory of it, but I really want to find out more about the who's the guy that y'all paired with for the YouTube channel? The guy from Luke.
Yeah, Luke Mikic. Yes.
Yeah. Now tell me the story of how y'all got him involved, because I was actually following him when I was creating the Bitcoin Daily Show, and we connected a little bit, and I really enjoyed the work that he was doing. But at the time, I think he was separate from y'all, correct?
Yeah, so he joined on February of last year, so just a little bit over a year ago. And he's a mad lad. He's a Bitcoin lover, a digital nomad, living all over Latin America. He left Australia for good during COVID, said, I'm not going back here and I'm going to travel the world and spread the word about Bitcoin. And that's what he's been doing. So he's got an exceptional talent for being on camera, being on YouTube. Is a wonderful speaker and has just really done great things. And he's pioneered a strategy on our channel where he goes live, usually about 2 or 3 times a week on our channel, talking about, of course, the most current news topics that come up on a daily basis. And he and I have been streaming now once a week. We go for about an hour or so, and then we can turn that into multiple videos and post that throughout the week. So it's definitely a learning and growing experience on YouTube for me. I'm new over there, but it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy doing this stuff just like I'm doing here with you.
Yeah, I love the fact, and that's kind of what I really liked him because he was brave enough to just go live, and the algorithm loves that. So if you have the courage to just press live, you really go to the top of the food chain for the algorithm. So I'm glad to see he does that, and that y'all are able to support each other in doing that. I know he had quite a story leaving Australia. I had not heard about his adventures into South America and being a digital nomad now. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's really embraced the lifestyle. I think he's made it pretty clear that he has very little, if no desire to go back to the country which he was from. I think Australia really showed their hand during the COVID pandemic. They had a very strict lockdown, very strict vaccination rules, and all that, and he just wanted no part of it. Yeah, he's all over Latin America, and the interesting thing, he really loves Peru. Peru is
Really.
his country of choice. Yes, he's a big Lima guy.
Now, is there something going on with in Bitcoin in Peru, or what's the Bitcoin scene look like there?
So it's interesting. I think that there's this initiative called Motive Peru, and they are very much on getting the rural side of Peru on the Bitcoin standard, going out to these sort of remote villages and but where a bunch of people don't have bank accounts, right? And getting them orange pilled and showing them that if you have a cell phone, which many of them do, you can have a bank account. So they are. I'd say Bitcoin in Peru is happening more out on the periphery, whereas in, of course, El Salvador, it's more on a central note. We've got Bitcoin Beach, Berlin, El Salvador, up in the mountains, two very strong circular economies, as well as in San Salvador. But yeah, I mean, that's another story that we can dive into, talking
Yeah.
about what's going on in El Salvador right now. It's been big in the news in the last week or two. Um, so yeah, if you want to go.
Yeah, let's dive into that because that's relevant news I think we're all interested in. So what's your take on what's going on in El Salvador?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to zoom out a little bit and go back to the beginning of it, right? Bukele became president in 2019. It was the murder capital of the Western Hemisphere. It was
Mhm.
overrun by gangs, of course, MS-13, one of the most notorious gangs in the world. That was their headquarters. And he put down the iron fist and cleaned up the country. And within a matter of 2 years, it went from being the most dangerous country to one of, if not the safest places in the Western Hemisphere, right?
Mhm.
So he cracked down hard on the gangs, cleaned that up, changed the lives of the average El Salvadoran person. And in going there, that was the number one thing that I heard is that people's lives had gone from night to day in terms of just their daily living experience. They would, if back when the gangs were in power, if they would just walk down the street, walk out of their house, go to work, they would get to the corner and there'd be a gang member standing there and say, "Give me 50 cents." And in a country when you make what, $300 $400 a month, if you have to pay a sidewalk tax of $2 or $3 a day just to walk by and not get beaten up or get robbed, that adds up quite quickly.
Right.
So, I mean, and that's the Disneyland version of it all, right? There's a lot of violence going on, a lot of
Mhm.
fear, and it was just not a great place to live. So he radically changed the country for the better in that regard. Of course, the Western media will say, "Oh, he's a dictator. He's not respecting the rights of these gang members and whatnot." And I mean, I'm sure there are people who were locked up in this whole entire raid, right? A country-wide raid. But the results for the vast majority of the people have been beneficial. So then, 2 years after cleaning up the country in 2021, he did the Bitcoin law, right, where he was the first. El Salvador became the first country in the world to make Bitcoin legal tender. And for Bitcoiners, I mean, I remember this very clearly when it was announced at Bitcoin 2021 in Miami. That was one of the most momentous moments in my Bitcoin journey. I mean,
Yeah,
that was in the thick of COVID, right? Miami was one of the few cities that was semi-open, and they threw this humongous event that was really just uh, nowhere else in the world was really that open at the moment. And so it was quite this amazing moment to celebrate freedom. And then we had El Salvador come on the scene and announce that they are becoming the first Bitcoin country in the world. And Jack Mallers was on stage to announce it. He was in tears. He was so overcome with emotion of what was happening. And yeah, it really felt like you were witnessing history, right? And it was in many ways. And so they enacted this Bitcoin law, and many Bitcoiners were extremely happy about how it happened. But of course, when your ideals meet reality, there's always some friction, right?
Yeah.
So they launched these Bitcoin ATMs across the country, Chivo Wallet, and they said that every Salvadorian citizen is going to get airdropped $30 worth of Bitcoin. And whenever you hand out free money, there's issues, right? So, I mean, there
Mhm.
was some fraud, there was people impersonating people, all that kind of stuff. And the rollout of the Chivo wallet system was, uh, was, I would say, questionable at best. But
Mhm.
at the end, I mean, this was a legal tender law, which meant that they would, of course, accept Bitcoin in taxes, and that every single business was supposed to accept Bitcoin. If the person wanted to pay in Bitcoin, the business was supposed to be able to accept it, and that was a big reason of why they rolled out this Chivo wallet across the country so that every company could accept it. But what you really found was that the biggest companies like McDonald's and Starbucks, um, they were the ones to really accept Bitcoin, and be have it out front and center, have point of sales systems where you could scan your QR code and pay with Bitcoin. Whereas the smaller mom and pop shops, people didn't really get too into it. And
Yeah.
so after about 2 or 3 years, they did a study of Bitcoin usage in El Salvador, and it's probably, I think, about 1 in 10 people used it on a daily basis, maybe or just even maybe lower, 7%. So, I mean, but again, I mean, ideals and reality. The fact that this was legal tender in this country was absolutely amazing. It attracted lots of talent from around the world. People were flocking to Bitcoin Beach. Tourism really exploded in some parts of the country because of it. The
Mhm.
circular economies grew very quickly. As I mentioned, Bitcoin Beach is one circular economy. There's another one up in the mountains, Berlin, El Salvador, a small town where I think there's over 60 plus merchants that accept Bitcoin. So you really can live on Bitcoin and not use any other currency when you're in that little town. So many cool things happening there. Bitcoin farmers market, the Bitcoin hardware store. I mean, it was Bitcoin country for that time, and I
Yeah.
say was for a particular reason. When they first enacted this Bitcoin law, there was some flack from the IMF, right? The International Monetary Fund did not like the
Mhm.
fact that they
What
were.
was their pushback back then? I mean, did they give like, an original pushback, and how long did that take? And what was it?
Yeah, so when they launched the Bitcoin law, the IMF put out some papers saying that this is no good, this is very unstable, this could lead to further economic hardship for the country, and sort of made it clear. They signaled to the rest of the world that El Salvador is now sort of has pariah status, right? That they're not
Mm.
part of the cool boys club. But then the question is, do you want to be part of that club with the IMF? Because a lot of the countries that receive aid from the IMF have been put in very precarious positions, right? They have to make economic deals where they either need to focus their economy on certain commodities that the people at home don't really use, but the rest of the world wants, and then their whole entire economy gets focused on that, and it really doesn't. Makes the economy a lot less resilient, right? When you're
Right,
focusing on a monocrop or one
right.
commodity that you have to sell out to the rest of the world. So, I mean, in the beginning, the IMF made it clear they didn't like it, and Bukele was pretty defiant. He was putting out tweets of like Simpsons memes where there's like shooing away the IMF who was like dancing on the
Mhm.
street or whatever, right? So, I mean, of course, he loves the moniker of the world's coolest dictator that the Western media has given him, and he sort of wears it with a wry grin. But
Right.
he was it was an act of defiance, right? To go and say the IMF, I don't want you anymore, don't need you anymore. We're on this new Bitcoin standard over here. They still use the dollar. Of course, El Salvador was really able to accept Bitcoin and adopt Bitcoin because they don't have their own currency, right? And so they had to deal with the worst parts of America's inflation and money printing with no recourse. Every other country in the world that has a money printer of their own, they can deal with debts by printing their own money and making that debt load less for the government itself to pay back, but of course, shouldering that burden on their citizens by destroying the
Mhm.
purchasing power of the money in the country. But El Salvador didn't have that privilege. They've been on the dollar since the 90s. And so by accepting Bitcoin, they were looking for a new economic path forward.
Mm.
Well, that brings us to present day, right? To the end of 2024. And it was pretty much a shock to the entire Bitcoin community that El Salvador had accepted a deal with the IMF. And in doing so, people really didn't understand what was going on here. Like, why would you, after all these years, 3 years of being Bitcoin country, why would you bend the knee? Because when you make a deal with the IMF, there are certain rules that you need to follow, right? So the deal was for 1.4 billion dollars from the IMF plus 2 billion plus more from the IMF partners, right? So it's about
Mhm.
3 billion plus dollars. And it's like you would, and so, but there was a bunch of rules regarding their Bitcoin and the government's dealing with Bitcoin. And so we're like, you'd give up your right to be Bitcoin country for a couple $1 billion. I thought you were doing so well with the tourism, and they had El Salvador had been paying their bonds on time and had been getting better sovereign debt rating status from the major rating agencies from around the world. But they made this deal,
Mm,
and when you really dig into it and see what's going on, the debt situation in El Salvador is in pretty dire straits.
mm.
When Bukele took over in 2019, they had about $21 billion worth of debt. As of 2024, they have $32 billion worth of debt,
Oh,
right?
wow.
So it's an over 50% increase within the last 5 years.
You have any idea what their GDP is for that nation?
It's around 30 to $35 billion.
Oh,
So
that's the dangerous part where it's exceeding or getting close to exceeding
your
your revenue.
GDP, right? Yeah. So once you, and so, I mean, of course, the economic history, any country that exceeds 120% of GDP in debt has always pretty much faced hyperinflation. I think there's been over 100 plus examples of that. The only country to have not done that so far is Japan, but
Mhm,
they're in this sort of slow motion train wreck and is in the super weird Keynesian
mhm,
deal right now, that which could be ending right before our very eyes, right? Right now. But when it comes to El Salvador, yeah, again, they don't have a money printer to alleviate the debt burden. Their debt has increased by over 50% within the last 5 years. And despite the fact that this is Bitcoin country and we thought that tourism was really changing everything, there really wasn't that material of an impact on the raw GDP numbers for
mhm,
the vast majority of the country, right? So they had to accept this $3 billion in order to stave off a default. And in doing so, I mean, the rules were laid out pretty clear that the government could no longer invest in Bitcoin. They had to dox all their wallets and tell the IMF exactly how much Bitcoin they had. They had to wind down their affiliation with the Chivo wallet ATM system and all that.
mhm,
They can no longer mine Bitcoin as a government, where that was another big narrative, right? The volcano bonds, volcano energy. They were going to use the geothermal energy of this country to mine Bitcoin in a renewable way, and keep doing it. So as of right now, they have over 6,100 Bitcoin, and I mean, but this is where it really gets interesting and weird is that
mhm,
even though they officially signed this deal at the end of February, they've been still stacking one Bitcoin a day as they have been for the last 6 months, year plus, right? It's been about a year since they put out this website where you can see the government official holdings and them adding Bitcoin on a daily basis, something that Bukele promised at the depth of the bear market, right?
mhm,
They became Bitcoin country in September of 21 when Bitcoin was around $45,000. Um, and over the course of 2022, it rose back up again. It hit 69,000, but then crashed down to 15, right? And he rode it all the way through. And at the bottom of the bear market is when he came out and said, we're going to be adding a Bitcoin a day. And they released those official numbers, and you can see their wallet adding one Bitcoin a day. But the question right now is, what's the deal here? The IMF was asked about it, and they said what El Salvador is doing right now with Bitcoin follows the rules that they stipulated for them. But I mean, it seems interesting. I mean, maybe this is from private donations. Maybe they have a side wallet that we don't know about that's not public, that they're just taking one Bitcoin out a day and adding to the one that is. So it's interesting times, but I mean, El Salvador. I mean, I still think Bukele is one of the best leaders in the world right now.
Mhm.
He's young, right? I think he's just barely in his 40s. He's got a family. He seems very much a man of the people. He'll go out and shake hands, and he's a rock star, right? And there was just three major things that happened in El Salvador just this last weekend. He came out and said every student who goes to public school, gets the right grades, does the right community service and whatnot, will get free higher education. So he's guaranteeing higher education for um, students there. And that's another beautiful thing about El Salvador over the last 3 years, is that it's provided this bedrock for Bitcoin education to just grow beautifully out in the wild. There's this
Mhm.
group called Me Premier Bitcoin, My First Bitcoin, and they have developed this grassroots Bitcoin education curriculum from the ground up, and that is being taught within the public schools. You have Node Nation El Salvador, where they bring nodes and mining equipment into the classroom. Students from middle school and high school are learning the basics of the Lightning Network. They're learning how to set up a node, how to run a hardware wallet in public school. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing.
Would
They
you
have
say that's probably the most robust educational system on earth right now as far as just teaching high schoolers? As far as I've heard of, I don't know of any state or university or anywhere that's even come close to what El Salvador's doing.
No, yeah, by far, it is the number one Bitcoin education system in the world right now, and
Mhm.
it's just so cool to see, because then they also have Cubo Plus, which is for talented developers. It's a much smaller program. I think there's only about 30 to 40 people who are able to become a part of this each year, but they are flown out to Lugano, Switzerland, which is another Bitcoin hub, and they have this exchange program, and they're taught by the best developers in the world, whether remotely or in person, and they're really focusing on creating this crop of Bitcoin talent, right? Of developers and people who are experimenting with Bitcoin on a fundamental level, and it's a beautiful thing to see. So yeah, they just had this free education initiative that released this weekend. Bukele just released a groundbreaking AI law, which really is made to attract AI developers from around the world, giving them freedoms and protections to develop their craft there and not be persecuted by the state. And thirdly, they also set up a deal with the United States to accept violent criminals, right? They've set up this pretty extensive prison system, right, to house
Mhm.
these tens of thousands of gang members that they locked up. And so it's much cheaper for America to send some gang members that they catch here, especially ones that are from there, back to El Salvador, and they'll
Right.
pay El Salvador to take care of that. And so, yeah, I mean, there's still lots of developments going on. I believe in the country. I mean, when you go to a place, as we talked about last time, I was in China for a number of years,
Mhm.
and when a country is economically developing, there's just this buzz in the air, right? People are excited to do business. They're willing to take chances, try things, go out on a limb, work hard on things. And when there's a lot of cranes in the sky, it just adds this a buzz in the air, as I said, that
Mhm.
is hard to replicate any other way. And El Salvador's got it right now. It's definitely a country on the up and up.
Yeah, it seems like a country that's really trying its best to prepare itself for this new digital age. I mean, heck, I think the biggest threat, if the IMF was going after anything, would be that educational system, because you can only do that for so long before you're graduating wave after wave of high schoolers. You let that go on for 10 years, and what does that do to your population? And I think that's the real threat, is not so much the government, which I kind of like to see what Trump and them are doing for us, but it's really the Bitcoiners of America, the Bitcoiners, the citizens of each nation, that if they adopt this, that's the to me, that's the thing that's really hard to cancel or attack, is the individual self-sovereign, sovereign individual.
Yeah, Bitcoin is a ground up revolution, right?
Mhm.
As I was saying before, with the implementation of the Chivo wallet and the rollout of the Bitcoin law, it was messy having it be top down and telling
Mm.
businesses you have to accept Bitcoin, and trying to airdrop people Bitcoin $30 worth in their wallet, and people commit fraud in order to try to collect as much as possible, right? So, but when you have people who have a genuine need, either they don't have a bank account or they realize that the money that they have is losing its value, that leads to people who teach themselves, who want to learn more, who want to get into the tech, who want to learn how to set up a hardware wallet, who and want to teach others. And as you know, is once you get bit by this bug, you want to tell as many people as possible until you
Yes.
realize that there's a lot of people who aren't quite ready to hear it just yet, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I did want to add that as part of our conversation is, the communication arm of Bitcoin, where we're really trying to create content, get the word out. From your point of view, since you've been at this game for longer than a lot of us coming into there, what can you tell, content creators in the Bitcoin ecosystem where they need to be? I remember you recommended to me as far as Nostr to get on Primal, what content you think has a lot of holes in it, maybe give advice to other content creators trying to follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to be you, right? Nobody else can be Craig and nobody else can be Rob. And what people really want to see is the genuine passion. There's plenty of people who are smarter than me, more articulate about Bitcoin and have been at it for longer. But there's not many people who have been willing to grind at it every single day and get their voice
Mhm,
out and to post on a nonstop, put out 20 tweets a day and
mhm,
create videos, expand what they're doing, they're offering on a regular basis, and just keep at it, right? The only way to get better is to practice and to practice out in public, on social media is it can be scary at first, of course, but at the end of the day, people respect it, and Bitcoiners respect other people who are trying to learn, trying to get their voice out there, and Bitcoiners have a pretty good, I would say, nose about them. They can
mhm,
tell who's a grifter, and who's just doing it for clout or for themselves pretty
mhm.
early on, and who can tell who's genuine and wants to spread the word as much as possible. So that's my biggest advice: is just be yourself and create, put it out there, and don't care if nobody sees it at first, because in the beginning you probably don't want them to, right?
That's right.
but
Right. I remember when I first started, it was just me getting the tech, the mic set up, figuring out StreamYard. You've got quite a tech stack and a hardware stack that you want, your first 50 to 100 episodes to just almost have no audience so that when you get an audience, you're not stumbling over yourself. But that's okay. I mean, it's okay to do 100 straight face plants. Nobody really cares anyway. It's where you're going, not really where you came from.
absolutely, yeah, but people also do want to see the journey too, right?
True.
Warts and all, and so don't be afraid to just go out there with what you have, right? I mean, I've been at this Bitcoin media game for a while now, and I just got this mic at Christmas, right? And now it's
Mhm.
nice. Now I have a good podcasting mic, but I
Right.
didn't have one for the longest time. So
Yeah.
it happens. Just let it happen gradually over time, and you'll realize, you'll see. Oh, learn something from a video here, look up a website over there, and you'll get the pieces over time, and you also get the comfort and experience to riff.
Yeah, nothing beats putting on the reps. Experience is the king here when it comes to content production. So let's go back a little to the nation state level. So aside from El Salvador, what do you think are the other maybe, future hotspots? And maybe even if we go after that to America, what are the states that you're seeing that are coming involved? But maybe first with the nations. Are there any other nations kind of trying to be similar to what El Salvador is doing or making good progress in any way?
Yeah, so interesting story in that regard, of course. We've got United States with a strategic Bitcoin reserve, but we can save that for later. I think the big news from this week, the most interesting story that came out on the nation state level is Rocket Man, Kim Jong Un, North Korea.
What?
Yes. So last month, February, there was one of the largest hacks, if not robberies, of almost all time. So Bybit is an exchange out of Dubai, a global exchange, and they're one of the largest. They had $1.5 billion worth of Ethereum stolen from the exchange.
Wow.
Yeah, so there
That's
was
a big one.
yeah, again, Ethereum, I do not recommend it, as most Bitcoin maximalists will not. but
Mhm.
it's got these smart contracts, right? And so they had over $1 billion in a wallet that they needed to move. It was multi-sig. There was multiple people who had to sign off on it. They did it with a blind signature. They didn't read the smart contract because you can't literally see it on the ledger itself. You can't verify where it. Whereas on a hardware wallet for Bitcoin, you can see, okay, I see the full string of letters here on my hardware
Mhm.
wallet. I see this full string on the computer. I verify it's one to one is exactly where it says it's going to, and then I can confirm just with my very own eyes where it's going.
Right.
But with Ethereum, it's this Rube Goldberg machine, where there's smart contracts and you literally couldn't even read it on the device itself. They blind signed it and hit OK. But it turned out that North Korea's Lazarus Group, their state sanctioned hacking group who has stolen billions of dollars in the past, was able to, I think they were able to infect AWS and get some package in there, but they were able to stop this or get the ETH sent to them rather than to the location it was supposed to go,
Mm.
right? So over the last month, the Lazarus Group has been laundering the money, right? They've been using this decentralized protocol called Thorchain. Um, they put the ETH in and were able to get Bitcoin out. They changed all their ETH into Bitcoin. They $1.5 billion worth of Ethereum turned into $1.1 billion worth of Bitcoin. And
Hmm.
so if you add that 1 billion of Bitcoin that they just stole, plus the Bitcoin they had already stolen, they now have 13,526 Bitcoin. And so if you go down the list of countries who own Bitcoin, you've got America supposedly number one. There still is no definitive number out there yet, but we've got
Mhm.
roughly 200,000. China comes in at number two with 190,000. Supposedly, again, that's not a hard number, but that's what most people believe. Three, we've got the United Kingdom with 61,000 that they had seized from some criminal activity. Four is Ukraine with 46,000. And again, of course, Ukraine is going through its own thing right now.
Mhm.
Those numbers are iffy, but Ukraine has always had a lot on the government level. And now number five, you have North Korea.
Man, I
13.
don't know whether to, be frustrated or congratulate them for at least being a smart enough criminal to know to convert your ETH to Bitcoin. Know your shit going.
Yeah,
That's a
man.
signal there, I think.
It's pretty crazy. And then they're right above Bhutan.
Mm.
Of course, Bhutan is a small country in the Himalayas. And the interesting thing about this country is that they've been able to acquire their $1 billion+ worth of Bitcoin through mining.
Mm.
Of course, they're in the Himalaya mountains. When the weather gets warmer, the snow melts. They have raging rivers, of course, and they're able to turn that hydropower into Bitcoin. They've been doing this for at least, I think, 4 to 5 years now. I think they started a little bit before COVID, investing in the mining rigs,
Mhm.
but they've been able to set up a really legitimate mining operation in the mountains using renewable energy, that hydro energy, and have accumulated over 13,000 Bitcoin.
So
And so,
that's more of a stranded energy play because
yeah,
they may have a difficult time, bringing that level of electricity to market if you don't have a population around there, but that's not a problem with a Bitcoin miner.
no,
They'll
no.
bring the energy demand to you.
Yeah, and so now they have, and they aren't just mining it and hodling it all. They are selling some on the market in order to provide for infrastructure, pay for government salaries and whatnot. And I mean, they just put out plans in the last week to develop this new airport, and it's absolutely stunning the way
Oh,
it
wow.
looks. It's like it's Bhutanese. Himalayan Buddhist architecture, right? It's like these triangles against each
Mhm.
other with the backdrop of the mountains. I mean, it looks
Without
stunning
an IMF loan? What?
without an IMF loan. Yeah, by secretly
What?
mining Bitcoin. Yes.
That's
It's
fantastic.
pretty cool. Yeah, and then right behind them, I guess it would be seventh place is El Salvador with
Mm.
their 6,000 Bitcoin.
Now, are there any other nations that, rolling out some Bitcoin strategy similar to how you see the United States? The states are trying to gear up to see how they can hold it, how they can mine it, and all the state houses, or say all of 'em, probably half of them, I think are doing something. Is there any other, states like that?
Yeah,
Um,
so country wise, it's been really interesting to see. America really take the bull by the horns since Trump got elected, right? During Biden's presidency, you could easily say that the industry was under attack, whether it be mining or the exchanges or Elizabeth Warren holding hearings about Bitcoin and stable coins being used for funding terrorism. They're really looking for any way possible to essentially shut this industry down. Operation Choke Point 2.0 has been fully admitted now, and there's been hearings just within the first month or so of the Trump presidency about what was going on with this industry, and it is absolutely shocking to see the extent in which they're willing to go to try to shut down this tech. Right? I mean, what if America in the '90s said, "No, the internet's a threat. Right? We don't want to shut down these companies before they can even have a chance here," and that might have happened if we had another Biden or Kamala term, right? So I think we really dodged a bullet in that regard. And since then, we've seen this wave, whether it's Trump promising a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which many Bitcoiners thought he was going to do on the first day, right, by executive
Mhm.
order. It took about a month and a half, but he actually did it. He signed the executive order. So America has, through executive order, set up a strategic Bitcoin reserve where the order is to go out, find how much Bitcoin they have, because the number is not definite. As I said, it's roughly around 200,000 Bitcoin. But again, half of that, all of it is from operations where it was seized through criminal
Mhm.
operations that they were able to get their hands on. But at least half of it is from the Bitfinex hack. And so Bitfinex is an exchange, one of the largest again, and they had over 100,000 Bitcoin stolen from them. The government was able to uh, get back around 94,000 Bitcoin from that hack. And so they know who that belongs to, right? And so it seems as if they're going to be giving those 90,000 Bitcoin back to Bitfinex.
Mhm.
Um, and that would cut the amount that is in our strategic reserve that we cannot sell because of this executive order in half already, right? Going from 200,000 to 100. So it will be interesting to see what happens in that regard. But nevertheless, they said they're not going to sell anything that is legitimately theirs that they don't need to give back. They will not sell, right? And then they
Yeah.
are going to look for budget neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
both,
don't know if you saw what David Sachs said when he came on, actually did an episode on this, just doing commentary when he came onto the All In podcast and really laid out what the United States Bitcoin strategy was. And I was shocked to see how many times he defined Bitcoin as totally separate. It's a commodity. It's completely different from everything else. Ethereum and all those other guys are in another category. We're never selling any Bitcoin that we can claim is officially ours if it doesn't go back to someone it was stolen from. And because the word on the street was it was Bitcoin, and then we would have all these other picking winners and stuff. We were going to hold them too. That was not the case at all, according to David Sachs. So I'm so glad that that's how it panned out.
yeah. So again, the week before the Trump gave the strategic Bitcoin reserve executive order, he put out a tweet, and the tweet said that they would have a digital asset stockpile that included XRP, Cardano, Solana.
Mhm.
That was in the first tweet, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, what? You just picked these three random coins?" And then an hour later, he goes, "Oh, and I love Bitcoin and Ethereum too." Right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
so ham-fisted. It's like sort
right.
of classic Trump, just like shooting from the hip. But yeah, so it does seem as if within the first month of his administration, there was a lot of lobbying. There was a lot of money spent to try to get these other digital assets included in a strategic reserve. But no, they are completely separated. There is the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and then there is the digital asset stockpile, and that includes all the other coins that the government has seized through criminal operations. But it's very clear in the executive order that the Treasury can do whatever it wants with the digital asset stockpile. So some are thinking, I mean, the only way they can acquire more Bitcoin is through budget neutral ways. Well, selling from the digital asset stockpile, whether it be XRP or Cardano or Solana or whatever it is that they have, and acquiring more Bitcoin would be budget neutral. So that's one way
Yeah.
they could do it. There's the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which during financial panics is sort of like the plunge protection team. They're able to go and buy things when the market tanks and whatnot. But that's $40 billion just sitting there at the Treasury's discretion. So they can go out and buy Bitcoin with that. And then there's all the talk of course, revaluing the gold certificates. And this is the big part of Senator Loomis's plan. So, of course, Trump signed this executive order, but whatever is created by the stroke of a pen and the president can be taken out by the next president in a stroke of a pen, right? So, in order to make this Bitcoin strategic reserve last the test of time, it needs to be signed into law by Congress. So that's what Cynthia Loomis is doing, the senator from Wyoming. She first introduced this last summer, but I don't believe it got out of committee. But now it's back in committee and reintroduced with renewed vigor. She's got at least, I think, 6 co-sponsors within the Senate. And then in the House, we have Representative Nick Begich. He's a freshman congressman, but he's been a Bitcoiner for a very long time. And he is introducing the bill in the House at the same time that Cynthia Loomis introduces it in the Senate. So it's expedited, right? And so we've got co-sponsors on both houses. It's being pushed forward. And this Bitcoin Act would have the United States acquire 1 million Bitcoin over the course of 5 years. So that's buying 200,000 Bitcoin a year. And how would they fund it? Again, it's supposed to be budget neutral, but the way that you would get the billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars to buy 1 million Bitcoin is by revaluing the gold certificates. So in the 1970s, we valued all of our golds at $42 an ounce. And it's been on the books at that level for the last 50 years. So if we were to revalue these gold certificates at their current market price, which is just over $3,000, that would add $800 billion to the balance sheet, right?
Wow.
And so then you could do what you want with that, right?
So you didn't tax people to get it. You're really just kind of redoing like you said, the value of the gold, and then you use that as a way when you use this pile of money and sell
Yeah.
it for Bitcoin.
And if you're thinking really galaxy brain, Michael Saylor has said this in interviews before that what's the way? I mean, it is very clear that sort of America is it's a whole entire monetary reordering right now, right? The whole entire rules of the game are being rewritten on a daily basis, whether we're trying to acquire Canada as the 51st state or acquire Greenland as a further acquisition, and then our relationship with Europe is extremely strained. So, I mean, to me, from a international relations students perspective, we are trying to set up this economic zone in our own hemisphere where we have all the resources that we need in terms of oil and lumber up in aluminum up in Canada. We've got the rare earths that we need for the technological advancements over in Greenland. And then we bring the manufacturing back home, which Trump has really been harping about, of course, too. Because if we were to go to war with China, I mean, we are in this Thucydides trap with us as the hegemon and a rising power coming up. We wouldn't have ammunition to last us more than 8 days, right? So, and we don't have the manufacturing capacity to build it out. So,
Right.
I think this is sort of, like it or not, this is where the world is sort of headed right now. America can no longer afford to be the world police. And we've got to, but if you are able to see that situation ahead of you and are able to plan accordingly, you still are the top dog right now, and they are going to position themselves in a way that will benefit America in their vision, right? And so if they are able to sell gold with the rest of the world, what China and Russia want, and they are able to buy Bitcoin and maybe set up these two separate spheres, trading with each other, with themselves, and then when they want to interact, gold and Bitcoin are the layers in which they would, right? So it's interesting times that we live in.
Yeah, and I was thinking, and I think Michael Saylor said this, but maybe you can help me understand a little bit better that, if we just sell our gold stockpile that floods the gold, and so we get to sell gold first, so we have first mover advantage, we sell it at market price. Again, that devalues all the gold because we have kind of like a supply shock. So all the people holding gold, like the BRICS nations, China and Russia, as an example, their gold goes down. Then we throw all that into Bitcoin. Our Bitcoin goes up. It kind of is a forcing function to get people to exit gold, go into Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin at a higher price since we've jacked it up, and that's going to further increase our price. And it's kind of in a game theory way. Have you kind of heard Michael Saylor lay that out as
Yeah,
one
no,
strategy?
exactly. That's exactly where I was going. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that would be an extremely economically violent period if we were to live
That
through
would
that,
be
right?
economic warfare, taking the gloves
Yeah.
off.
And just volatile, right? I mean, we've been very
Right.
lucky to live in America and have this privilege of the world reserve currency and have
Mhm.
the whole entire world need to purchase its commodities and especially oil in dollars, and that has allowed us to live this abundant life, right?
Mhm.
Even though as Americans, you always think, oh man, life is hard or whatnot, but no, I mean, we've been extremely lucky to
Mhm.
have this dollar privilege, even though as Bitcoiners, we want a system where people closer to the money printer can't benefit from it, right? We want a world where there's a neutral reserve asset and people who, through merit and hard work, those who provide more value are able to acquire more wealth.
Mhm.
And so that's the dream, that's the vision, right? But you also have to realize that the world that we're living in is one where, yes, we are in America and we do use the dollar right now, and most of the world has to. So
Yeah.
we have been able to have that dollar privilege.
Yeah, no. So now let's go to the state level. What are you seeing in the states? I remember, gosh, I think about a year ago, Louisiana, my home state, passed some of the most favorable laws to mine, to own, to take custody, to have a node, to protect every Louisiana citizen's right for that. And then you just started to see a lot of other people kind of roll something out. But I don't think anyone, maybe you can correct me, but has any states kind of taken a stance similar to what the United States is doing now, holding as a treasury reserve asset or as some type of reserve capital, like what I think is going through Texas right now?
Yeah, so you're right. In 2024, there was a whole bunch of states, of course, mostly Republican states, that passed laws that, as you said, the right to self custody Bitcoin, to run a node, to mine Bitcoin, that these are rights of the citizens to do these activities that cannot be infringed. But once Trump won, there was a whole wave of these strategic Bitcoin reserve bills
Mm,
that were pushed forward. Utah was number one. They were leading the race, and that was partly due to the fact that their legislative session for the year is extremely short. It's only
mm,
about 2 months or so. So the bill has to get introduced through committee, then through both houses, and then put it on and see if it passes or not. So it got to the last stage and it failed. So that was shot down in Utah. And so now the closest one, yes, is Texas. It has gotten through the Senate. It still needs to be voted on in the House, but
mm,
that is the last stage for it, and they would be the first state to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And now there's like multiple bills that are live right now. The first one was that the state itself would not purchase any more Bitcoin, but would simply accept it as taxes or through donations to establish a reserve. But I think there is another bill that is live right now in Texas where the state could
mm.
spend a portion of its treasury on Bitcoin itself. So, yes, Texas is leading the way. Arizona is right behind it as
Well, do
well.
we know where Texas governor stands if it gets through the House?
Well, the lieutenant governor is a huge proponent of this bill, and he's been
Okay,
pushing for it super hard. So, I think if it gets through the House, then we're golden.
that'll be signing the law.
Yep.
Okay, and so then what were you saying about what was in the other state?
Arizona is the other one that has
Mm,
gotten through committee, and I believe through one chamber of the Congress.
mm,
So yeah, I mean, it does seem as if there was a lot of momentum for these bills, particularly in January. And of course, I mean, with Bitcoin and sentiment and momentum, a lot of it revolves around price, right?
yeah,
And so when Bitcoin is making continuous new all-time highs, it's a lot easier to get people whipped up and excited and to, I think, sort of push these things through. And it's kind of interesting to see how Bitcoin price has cooled down a bit, and
mm,
so have these efforts in the legislatures.
yeah. Yeah, and I think right now, global liquidity is just kind of shrinking when you've got, Musk and his team pulling $1 trillion out of the global economy that eventually makes its way to just paying bills. And then you've got, the just our national economy kind of shrinking a little. So because Bitcoin is the most liquid asset out there, it's going to be the first in. I mean, first to sell because it's just such a sellable in demand asset that if you're looking at around your house for stuff to sell, Bitcoin is just like readily available when you're just trying to make ends meet because an economy shrinking. So until liquidity shows back up, I think right now we're just kind of draining all the poor people that are, maybe we're just buying as much Bitcoin as they can, maybe even overbought a little Bitcoin. So now they've got to pay some bills.
Yeah, Bitcoin is definitely it tracks global liquidity. You're absolutely right about that. But it seems to do so on about a 6 to 8 week lag, right?
Mm,
So global liquidity has to ramp up first, and then Bitcoin chases it. And
yeah,
so, I mean, during the end of 2024 in the fall last year, I mean, the Biden administration was spending like drunken sailors, right? I mean,
right.
most administrations do that when there's an election coming up, right? If they're in power, they're going to try to grease the wheels and get as much money in the economy as possible to give them the best chance to convince people to vote for them. So, and I mean, and I think if you just lag that by 6 to 8 weeks, then you've got Bitcoin running up to new all-time highs as it did in early January, right? So that, and then since then, there's been definitely a squeeze on global liquidity. And is it a function of Doge and these government efficiency efforts? To be honest, I think that's more just theater. Because of course they just signed the spending bill. They just Trump went against one of the most upright congressmen I think that we have in this country, Thomas Massey, and said
Mhm,
that this guy's got to go because he didn't vote for my spending bill. When the spending bill just like pretty much undid all the cuts that Elon had done for the first
mhm,
6 weeks or so, right? And I think right now the number is roughly $50 billion or so that they've cut. But the interest expense this year is on path to reach $1.5 trillion,
oh my
right?
gosh, that's crazy. That
$1.5 trillion in interest.
yeah,
We're adding $1 trillion of debt to the national debt every 100 days.
mhm,
Like we sort of are in this terminal phase where there's no slowing it down. It's going vertical. It's
mhm.
going vertical. And if you see these charts, if you have any real idea of what's going on here, you need it. You need an escape hatch. You need a lifeboat. And that's why we're so passionate about Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I mean, because, without this life raft that you can hop on, then you're strapped to this dollar and where it's going, and it's gonna take some, maybe Musk can do a turnaround like he did with Twitter on the nation state level with the strong arm of Trump maybe ramming it through, but man, that is gonna take some economic jujitsu to pull this off and outpace this growing, interest payment on the national debt and to get it under control. I think they have a plan and stuff. If they can really get in there and just make the government actually more efficient, that would be great. But I don't even know if it's enough, even if they accomplish all that stuff.
No, I mean, I don't know, man. I love the idea behind it, right? It sounds
Yeah.
great, but I just think that like it's like an addict on methadone, right? I mean,
Mm.
it needs it to stay alive. It needs this funny money to be just pushed into the system at ever greater numbers, or else it's just going to seize up.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we're seeing right now. And it's just a little bit, right? All we did was cut $50 billion. That's like 3.3% of just the interest rate that or interest payment that we
Mhm.
have on our debt, right? $50 billion to $36 trillion is absolutely infinitesimal. Like you can't even see it on a chart if you're comparing the two. So overall, I mean, the fact that $50 billion being cut would cause this to cause these problems and cause the freakouts that we're seeing. And I mean, it's also just the social component of it all, right? I mean, the fact that there are Tesla dealerships being blown up right now because they don't like what's going
Mhm.
on because they cut $50 billion. I mean, what happens if there's actually $1 trillion cut? Well, then you're gonna see who knows what you'd see, right?
Right.
It's gonna get wild.
Right. A lot of social unrest. And I mean, I think for them to succeed at their game outside the Bitcoin strategy of just jump and chip, which is, of course, the one I'm a proponent of and I've already jumped. So there's plenty of room on our life raft. We can hold the whole population of the planet over here. Um, but yeah, I think they have to successfully cut that trillion and then renegotiate this $10 trillion of debt they've got to renegotiate by the end of this year. And then ramp up the economy, bring in the tariff money, bring back manufacturing, and just, I mean, double the U.S. economy in some fashion. And then they might have what it takes to combat this interest payment debt. And it's growing. That like the debt obligations, and that's what I think people don't really talk about is the obligations, the unfunded liabilities of the United States government. This is VA, this is Social Security, this is Medicaid, Medicare with an aging population, and it's only getting bigger. And each year you're picking up a larger unfunded debt liability to add to the already the spending problem we have. And Musk isn't going after those. He's not going to cut
No,
Social Security. He's
no.
trying to cut fraud, but eventually he gets to the end of the fraud train, and there's nothing but unfunded liabilities, which you can't cut.
Over $200 trillion worth, right?
Oh gosh,
$200 trillion.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
I mean, if they were real, they'd say, okay, anybody under 45 is not getting Social Security, right?
Yeah, or at least not till 75. They could
Yeah.
say if
Or
you're over 40 or under 40, now the new retirement age is 75, so it's a
yeah,
30-year problem or something like that. To do
yeah,
something.
something. But you can't. It's the golden calf, right? I mean, it's this promise that the government made that it can't step back from, or else the government sort of loses legitimacy in some
Mhm,
regards, right? It's this great promise that we've had for about 100 years now,
mhm.
and if you renege on it, I mean, just think of how much money you put in every paycheck to pay for your Social Security, and then they go and say, Sorry, it was a Ponzi scheme. It's
Yeah,
not there for you. We don't have it. We did not store it away. We're not growing it in any investment or anything. No, any money you put in is being directly sent out.
right.
No, it's a
Yeah.
hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, and but then that there is that issue of I think when they set the age limit, the average life expectancy was below the age limit, but now life expectancy is like 20 years beyond that, or close to maybe 15 years beyond that. So, people are receiving Social Security that should have been dead. Of course, then Musk is finding 120-year-olds and 150-year-olds receiving Social Security. So what's up with that?
Yeah. And,
Uh,
and then he goes on some interview with Ted Cruz this week and says that there are 14 agencies with magic money computers that can
oh
just
my gosh!
send out money at will from for payments. Like, we really don't know what's going on. And then they're going to audit Fort Knox. Is the gold there? Is the half of America's 8,000 tons of gold in this building? And the funny thing, it would take 18 months to verify that, right? Whereas you can verify the exact amount of Bitcoin in
Mhm.
circulation every 10 minutes. Um,
Yeah,
there's just so
I
many.
heard I heard that they couldn't find any more gold spray paint in a lot of Home Depots around Fort Knox for some reason. Maybe they're just starting to paint up a bunch of bricks. No, it's I would be shocked if they go to audit it and there's not near as much there. Why? I'm so curious as to why they haven't. If it's there, that would be such a boost to, I guess, the morale to say, "Hey, yeah, all the gold's here. Here it is. We're doing fine." Unless it's not there, then I drag my feet on rolling that news out.
There hasn't been a full audit since the 50s, right?
Oh my
In the
god.
in the 70s, they sent in a couple congressmen and some TV cameras, but they were just walked around for like an hour or two and then said they were kicked the hell out. I think multiple congressmen have said that they've tried to get in there and they've just been not allowed. I mean, in the late 60s, Europe realized that we were spending money on social programs. We were spending money on Vietnam. We were supposed to be the shepherds of the world's gold supply, essentially, as the world reserve currency that is backed by gold. But we got called for it in the late 60s by the French. They sent over gunboats and said, "Give us our gold." And that didn't last for long because by 1971, Nixon said the dollar is no longer redeemable for gold, right? So it's been over 50 years since
Yeah.
we've been had just complete funny money, and there's, I think, little reason to believe that that gold is actually there.
Mm. Yeah, and then who knows how much that's been rehypothecated and, papered money over. So, I don't even know what the ratio is right now, if there is, if that even matters anymore.
Oh yeah, I mean, it just the big gold vault that there is actually some gold in the Bank of England over in London, I mean, even there are arguably hundreds of claims for every ounce of gold, right? So it's really, the world needs hard money. The world goes crazy without it, as we're seeing today. As we've seen, it just, it feels great in the beginning. You can pay for everything you want. You can pay for all the social programs. Social Security works when you have fiat money, but only for a certain amount of time. And it
Right.
feels like that time is up.
Yeah, I think this was the perfect timing for Bitcoin to be invented, starting to grow, to hit the nation state level. It almost seems like it's just maturing at just in the nick of time. And now the only thing we need to do is to get the word out, because you don't need to wait for any collapse or nation state or permission. This is a permissionless system, so you're welcome to come in at any moment. You're one of Rob's videos away from just understanding it and exiting the sinking ship of any nation state that you're in. And you don't have to move. That's the beauty of it. Usually you had to come to America to have American rights and freedoms and property rights. In Bitcoin, you can stay right where you're at and have the greatest property rights ever had by any man. So all right, last message is, where are you taking the Bitcoin News? Um, I guess now it's just a full blown media company because you're pushing out stuff in every content, every form, written, newsletter, now video. So tell me what the next few years looks like as far as what y'all are looking to do.
Yeah, I mean, one personal mission for myself is to get out there more on camera, right? Do more interviews, do more live streams. Been working on the short form video, doing about 60-second videos that are made on TikTok, but then can be blasted out on every other platform.
Mhm.
And I think it's super important because, I mean, for the last 2 years, I've been building this brand, Bitcoin News, but very few people know that I'm the guy who's actually behind writing the stuff and putting stuff
Mhm.
out there, right? So I think that's super important, especially as we enter this age of AI. And I think there's going to be a lot of content generation by AI, right? And you're not going to know if it's a real person or not. But
Mhm.
if you are a real person and you are making content, I think it's super important that you do put your face out there, that people recognize not only your brand but your personal brand too, and are able to connect those two things. So uh, if you're watching this, you're gonna see more and more of me. That's the goal for the next year.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
That's great. And you can see that's happened with Michael Saylor, with Jack Mallers, that I think a lot of behind their brand is because it's hard to build a relationship with a logo. But when you've got a leader out front, leading from the front, making himself public and stuff, people can kind of buy into a message coming from a human. And I think human, especially live content, is so important in this digital age where I think less and less content is as a proportion is going to be human content. It's going to be mostly AI, highly edited, flooded content, and that just spikes the value of anybody like yourself that's willing to go out and produce content for the planet. That, to me, that's going to be more and more rare. So yeah, keep going on that, and I'm right behind you on that one. I kind of see that coming, and I'd say you do get better and better the more you go live. You get just better and better at the content. At least that's been my experience.
100%. And it's a skill that I think everybody needs now. We live
Mhm.
in this connected age. And again, if you don't want to be drowned out by content created by computers, you gotta have your own flair. You gotta have your own style. And just by being a human being, you do, right? It's just how comfortable are you putting it out there?
Yeah, yeah, if you speak enough, you'll find your own voice. Just get out there, and I love your first message, which is no need to copy, just be authentic, and you'll find your own space in this community. But
Absolutely.
yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I appreciate you coming out as we're kind of getting this new channel wrapped up. I've only got a team of there's only 4 of us, so I'm catching up to you. And we got a long way to go to kind of get to where you're at. But we're going to do our best to, hopefully stand shoulder to shoulder and continue to press out good content for the Bitcoin community.
Yeah, Craig. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy your company. I think you've got a great vibe. You're a great spokesperson for Bitcoin, and I think as you've experienced it yourself, Bitcoin changes you, right? It changes your life, and We're both living examples of it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Bitcoin will make you do a quality audit on your entire life, your relationships, your spirituality, your diet. You'll probably start eating meat a lot.
Yep.
It's been
Well,
my experience. Well, man,
100.
thank you so much for coming on to the show. I appreciate it. Well, I'll send you an invite maybe in a few months, check up on you, see how you're doing, and maybe have you give us another update on the Bitcoin news.
Cheers, Craig. It's great speaking
Yep.
with you.
Appreciate it. Bye. All right, so that was Rob Wallace with Bitcoin News, one of the early guys that I reached out to, and I just saw the work he was doing. He has been plowing out great content, and he really has been kind of the man behind the machine. So I'm really glad to see him producing live content, getting his face out there, because I think you just really need those guys to build trust. There's nothing build trust like a good personality, and he is one of the good Bitcoin people out there that's been doing it for a long time. And so you can find his content a lot on X, but he's also a big proponent of Nostr. I think that is the next big thing that as Bitcoiners we want to embrace is because that really is the thing that protects free speech. He puts his stuff out on Primal. You can also see some things that Bitcoiners are doing on Damus. So if you haven't heard about Nostr, this is kind of the early stages of that. It's the early stage free speech stuff. A lot of Bitcoiners doing some good work out there, and so anything you can do to support content being produced on the Nostr protocol is great. Until then, X seems to be a lot of where stuff exists, but a lot of the other platforms, I know me included, will push stuff out on LinkedIn. You can find us on Facebook. A lot of good stuff coming out on YouTube. You can find a lot of stuff that Rob's doing on YouTube as well. They're building a great little YouTube channel and stuff. So really encouraging to see him grow as fast as he's growing. And I can't wait to see how his growth spikes when the number goes up here in hopefully the next 6 months. If I had to guess, as liquidity frees up, hopefully Bitcoin will follow as the whole planet is starting to wake up, even at the nation state level. We're just getting a lot of media coverage. And I think Rob can remember back in the day when we were just like the bastard child that was considered crazy, even speak in Bitcoin. And now it's almost like we have an air of legitimacy to us, where we see a lot of really strong individuals, especially on the back of the nation states, and banks now starting to talk about it. Nation states and states in America starting to really consider passing law to protect ownership of it, holding it on their own balance sheets. And I think this is just a great time to be alive. This is a great time to get into Bitcoin. And I promise you, if this is the first time you're hearing Bitcoin, especially if you're from my Parks and Rec community, Small Government People, which is another podcast I do, if you're listening to this show, I also recommend that you look into what Rob's doing. He has some great content, way more advanced and better than the stuff I'm doing. So as I'm the doorman, I'm here to open the door to Bitcoin, introduce you to guys like Rob and a lot of the good work they're doing. So make sure that you're following any of the stuff they're doing, follow any of the other good Bitcoin content creators. If you came in through me, I welcome you to go follow all the other good content creators here in Bitcoin. And you are definitely not too late to the party. Bitcoin is just getting warmed up. It's still under a $2 trillion market cap. There is $900 trillion worth of stored value out there in the world that it can consume. And as the economy grows, it could consume, it could outpace that, even as all these fiat dollars just devalue and devalue. There really is only one asset out there that has limited supply. And here's something that you might not always think about. Did you know that there really hasn't been a demand that would not affect supply? If you had enough demand, supply would increase. Look at it this way. If gold goes to 10,000 an ounce, how many companies are going to be shutting down so that they can go mine gold because it's so profitable, because they want to bring more supply to the market? So the number of gold miners would just increase. Gold mines would open up because it's just profitable. It's much like when the price of oil goes up, now a lot of unprofitable wells become profitable, so they turn on and people start exploring for oil, bringing oil to market because it's just profitable. When the price goes down, now these oil wells aren't profitable, they cap them off and just wait for it to go back up. However, in Bitcoin could go to a 1 million, 10 million per Bitcoin, and there is nothing you can do to increase the supply. This is something we've never had as a species before. And so for those of you who think that how high do you think Bitcoin's going to go? And the real answer to that is it's going up forever. It's going up forever against a fiat currency that can just be printed and printed and printed. This is something that you can't get anymore. And there's only not even a couple million left to mine, which means now you have to buy Bitcoin from someone who's holding it. And I can tell you the hodlers of Bitcoin are never selling, because their correct answer is, what am I selling it for? I'm going to sell Bitcoin for something weaker. And the last thing I'll leave you with, remember, Bitcoin always moves to stronger and stronger hands. It's always moving to the place where it's most respected. And a lot of times, if you have weak hands, somebody with strong hands is coming to get it from you. So appreciate you coming on today, Rob. Here every night, well, at least Sunday through Thursday, 9 p.m., Craig LeBlanc, the Doorman, with the Daily Bitcoin Podcast. Appreciate y'all showing up today. Love you guys. I'll see y'all here again tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Welcome to the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, where knowledge meets financial freedom. We're here to break down the world of Bitcoin. No fluff, no hype, just real talk about how this digital asset is reshaping the future of money. Inflation is stealing your purchasing power, but what if there was a way to fight back? Enter Bitcoin, the digital currency that empowers you to take control of your wealth. Ever wondered why your money doesn't stretch as far as it used to? At the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, we educate, inform, and inspire. From expert interviews to breaking news, we bring you everything you need to stay ahead in the Bitcoin community. Market updates, expert insights, real-world use cases, and practical tips to navigate the Bitcoin economy. So whether you're a seasoned Bitcoin investor or just getting started, this is your daily dose of Bitcoin wisdom. Don't miss out. Subscribe now, hit that bell icon, and let's break free from the chains of inflation, one Bitcoin at a time. The Daily Bitcoin Podcast, your gateway to financial freedom.